Okay, looks like it. Okay, so we can go straight into the demo, right? It's makes it easier. All right, so I'll share my screen right now since everything's set up here. Share. Okay, there we go. So you should be able to see my screen. Yeah, so what I'll be presenting is our POS, as well as some of the sort of modules that go around the POS. So that's for inventory management, as well as the kitchen display. So I have quite a few things open here. Just a note, I'm using this inside of a browser, but that's just for me to do a demo when the POS is installed at the location, either on a PC or on a tablet. It wouldn't be in the browser, right? So it's a native application. It's running in a window or full screen, definitely not in the browser. It could, but usually that's not the case, right? So this is just for me to do the demo. It's not normally a browser-based POS. So the one thing that sets our POS apart from other POS is that we are really built for NetSuite, right? So we get the stamp of approval from NetSuite saying we're built for NetSuite, which means that we test everything properly on NetSuite. They do some quality control checks as well. But we are also literally built on NetSuite. So everything you see in the POS corresponds one-to-one with the data in NetSuite, right? So that even starts with the login. So as I log in here as an employee, that's an employee that's already in NetSuite, right? So in NetSuite, you have employee records, and the ID I'm typing in here corresponds to one of those employees, and all the data is the same on both sides. So you're actually using NetSuite here without actually using NetSuite. There is a bit of a technical component in between, which is mostly for queuing data. So the data goes through the cloud system before it goes into NetSuite. But there's no syncing or translation or whatever going on. The only thing we do is keep data offline, right? So you can use the POS offline because we keep the data there as well. But all the data corresponds with NetSuite's data. Okay, so as I log in here, I have one POS set up as a sort of food and beverage POS, but I can also show another one later, which works slightly different. So let's say for a bakery or something that works differently. So but for a restaurant POS, we start in this screen, which is supposed to be the tables in a restaurant. Right now, they're just 6 tables, but in a real restaurant, you'd have, of course, a much bigger screen with all of the tables in a restaurant. That's, of course, configurable by location. This is basically just a picture. But the tables are identified in the picture by the location. Okay, so I select a table, and in that table, I can see what's going on there. Right now, there's nothing going on. And then I can go to the order. So this screen is basically our main screen of the POS. This is where you make an order. And over here, the idea is that you're looking at the receipt as it's going to be printed out. So this will be the logo of the shop or restaurant. And then the items that are sold are going to show up over here. Right, so it's very easy to understand and learn for new staff. It takes them about 5 minutes to understand how the POS works, honestly. Right over here on the left side, you have a menu, right? And that is one way to enter products into a sale. So I can just go to platters. I can select a mixed platter here, and then I get some options. So this is particular to the F&B POS, where I select, components of the item. So I can select, salami and ham, and then camembert and cheddar, and then there's some optional bread which I can pick, or maybe 2. And then when I confirm that, then it starts to add the item to the receipt. So you can see it looks exactly like it's going to be printed, just because I added the items from the menu. So another way to add items over here is using barcodes. So especially if you have a shop which is does retail as well as F&B work, you might have, for example, a wine that has a barcode, and as I scan the barcode, that item gets added in as well without having to go through the menu, right? So either you pick an item from the menu, or you enter a barcode in. There's also a product search, which in a restaurant you wouldn't normally use. I'll show it later on. So that's how you add items to the particular sale. And then, as this is just a restaurant, right? Basically, all I'm doing here is ordering items, and I can, for example, go to desserts and add some ice cream. And here I can select the flavor. So let's say 2 scoops of vanilla. That's it. So you'll notice here as well the fire now, which I can change to hold in a restaurant. So again, this is a particular F&B feature that we have where we're actually keeping these items in the sale and we're not sending them over to the kitchen system. So when I confirm this, it will tell me that this is on hold. And now I can say I'm done here, right? So I can actually leave this screen and it'll tell me that at table 1, there's this, there's the receipt there. So I can go to another table and then, go to pasta and put that in here and then click done here. So I basically have multiple active sales that are going on, both of which are unpaid. But the one thing I can do, and this is where I'll go to our kitchen display system, is see these items in the kitchen, right? So we have a kitchen display module, which sort of replaces the paper ticketing system that you see in most restaurants. So this can be an iPad or it can be a big television. There can actually be multiple of these. So you can have multiple screens that each have their own items. So you can have one salad bar and one, a hot kitchen, one cold kitchen, etc. And then the items will be split out. So this might go to just one station and not all of them. And then the other item will just go to the cold side, let's say. So for F&B, this is very handy to have because all of this information, including the timing, will be submitted to NetSuite as well in the fulfillment, right? So you're essentially fulfilling these items, and that will put the timestamp there. So over here, I can say, well, I'm done with this, and when I click done, that disappears from here, right? And then when I'm done with this, I get to say which one I'm fulfilling. The wine is a glitch here. It shouldn't have shown up in the kitchen, of course, the wine, but I can say that this one is done, right? So now the ice cream is still sitting here. I can go back to my point of sale, and go here, and then say I want to, fire the ice cream. So you can come back here and then change this to fire now, or I can actually just use this fire all button. So there's a bunch of sort of table service buttons that are here. You can merge and split the items across different tables. I can say, I want to move this to table 4, and then say which ones I want to move. And this way you can either split a receipt and move only a few items to a different table, or you can merge these to a table that already has some other items. So let's say table 3, I can move these over, right? And that's only for table service, of course. So if you have a fast food restaurant, you wouldn't use this system with tables. In a fast food restaurant, though, you might, sorry, when you make the sale, you would want to record a number so that you can call the customer back. So we have a system where you, for example, have pagers, those like little buzzers you can give to a customer. We integrate with those. And then you can record, instead of the table number, you can record a pager number. So then you can use barcodes on the pagers to scan them in really quickly. And that's what you would use in a fast food restaurant situation, as opposed to just table service. Okay, so let's fire all the items. Click done over here. And when I go back to the kitchen, now my ice cream is also showing here as to be fulfilled. So when I click done over here, the wine stays here, but that was my mistake. So the basically everything's fulfilled. And then when you go here, I'll show this later in the other demo, which is like a bakery. So I won't go into the customer over here just yet. But the one thing we can do over here is go to payment. And then I can select one or more payments here. So I can select MasterCard, make a payment here for the amount. And then I can take another payment from the list and make a split payment, right? So split payments are very easy to do over here. When I type 2 different amounts over here, it will just simply add them up, and then it'll tell me to change if I use the cash payment, right? In NetSuite, this will be submitted as a sales order with these particular items. We actually do a trick here where this is a service item, and these are inventory items, so that the inventory for these individual components is actually fulfilled for the sale. But this remains a service item, right? So here you can actually capture the price, you can capture any discounts. So those will go to the service item, whereas we're actually putting these inventory items in the sale from the POS itself. So we have a custom records linked to this particular item, which sort of lists the options that we have here. And you saw just now, you can actually change these options here, and whether they're optional and how many there are, all that's configured in the custom record setup that we have. So for normal items, though, you wouldn't have these particular components. So this is just an inventory item, and then this one is again a service item with the inventory of vanilla versus chocolate. Okay, anyway, so this goes into the sales order with these items in here. It uses the correct texts, so you can actually have multiple texts that might apply to a single sale. These would change also depending on particular items that are in here, just like they would in NetSuite or the customer, right? And then we add up the texts and you have a total. The prices can also be text inclusive, by the way. Just like in NetSuite, you have a text inclusive option where you advertise the price including text, and then it wouldn't separately add it up over here. So we support everything in terms of texts. And then the payments go in as separate payment records, especially if you have two different ones. We just create an invoice and two separate payments. And then that's paid. So now when I submit this, it basically clears the table. It tells me how much change to give this customer, and the customer is basically gone, right? So this table is now free again. So that's table service, right? And the kitchen display. So all of the options here are basically for tables and then making a receipt there. Now, if we're looking at let's say a bakery or a fast food restaurant, when I log in over here, this just brings me directly to the receipt view, right? Let me just clear this. Oops, clear the payment. And so I already did this earlier. So this brings me directly to the receipt view, and there is no tables, right? So this goes directly to sale, and that's because this is like a fast food or a bakery restaurant, right? So you're just doing one sale at a time, submitting it, and then the next one. So I can add the items from the menu here, or I can add a barcode and then add an item that way. If I scan the barcode again, it does just two quantity for that one. Or I can go to product search. There is a hotkey for this as well, so it's easy to get to. And over here, I can just find an item just like this. And then.
Tadi adem.
Sorry, was there a question? Okay, I guess not. So in a product search, I can actually find particular items here. See the item that I want to look at, and these fields are taken from NetSuite. These are all stored in NetSuite, and we're synchronizing them to the POS. So you don't have to administer the items in the POS separately. All of your data is in NetSuite, and we're just pulling that down in the POS. So all these fields are taken there, including the price. We also support different price levels as well as group pricing for customers. So we list the base price here, but we'll be able to pick the correct price if you select a different customer or even a different payment method. So the description here as well, and we can also show a picture. So for example, for a wine, you might want to show the label here. And then when I add this to the sale, that's basically the third way you can add an item to the sale. So this, of course, also works in sort of an F&B scenario, right, where you can search for a particular item, but it's more common in retail. So here, the other thing you see is that we automatically apply a promotion. So this works pretty much like Suite promotions. So if you're familiar with Suite promotions, it's pretty much the same thing, but we have a custom record for it, which has a few more options, as well as the option to import using CSV. So if you have a CSV file, you can then import the promotions using that CSV file into NetSuite. So these are three different ways to add items to the receipt, as I said, and then the promotions apply automatically here. There is also a button here for sort of manual promotions. So like a staff promotion, for example, can be added in here so that you can apply them manually, right? So that would work this way. Then The other item I want to show here is that the customer question prompt here brings up this dialog where there's a customer search. So we don't store customer data on the POS itself for privacy reasons. What you're doing here is you're actually searching NetSuite for a particular phone number or customer ID and finding a customer this way. You can also see their past purchases over here. So, you can see whatever they bought before. And this is all coming straight from NetSuite. So if there are other channels like e-commerce that are posting sales to NetSuite, you'll be able to see them over here too. And this is great for just seeing what the customer bought, but also doing returns. So I'll show returns later. So you can basically select a line and do a return from here. So that's the customer data. We also have a loyalty program. So every customer has a loyalty balance, which is basically the sum of points that they get when making a purchase, right? And then you can do a redemption where they're offsetting their points for a discount. So I'll show that later. So this customer is loaded from here. When I select this customer, it gets added to the sales. So we can see it over here. And then you can see their points balance over here. So this is our loyalty program, and I can do a redemption where it tells me, 410 points is $4.10 apparently. This is customizable though. So the factors between how much you spend and how many loyalty points the customer gets, and then also how many loyalty points you need to for a particular dollar value redemption, that's also configurable. So that is the loyalty program. We do also have options for corporate sales. So if I search for for a company here, this company has a credit limit and terms. So that triggers a different logic in the POS, where when I select this customer, it actually gives me different ways to deal with the sale. So you can make a draft sales order, it can make a sales order with deposit, an invoice with credit. So that's also basically just part paying the sale, or just doing a normal sale, like fully paid. So if I select sales order with deposit, confirm that, it basically takes the credit of the customer. So I can actually submit this, which will go to the customer's credit amount, and I can still take a part payment as well. So I can take a deposit essentially. When I enter this in, you see that there's a payment here, but it's not enough, but that's okay because the rest will go on credit, right? So, and that's because this customer, this particular customer has credit in NetSuite. So all those NetSuite fields, are read out, and we can actually use that over here. So after I make this sale, I can then already, just like on the other side, you can take a payment. So let's take $80. There's $14.30 change, and now I can submit this. So the way this goes, it goes into NetSuite pretty much in real time, but it doesn't wait for it, right? So I can go here and make the next sale, and just add an item here, go to the next customer, etc. So you don't have to wait for this. But when I go to transactions, you'll see that the sale has already been submitted. So it happens in the background, right? So this was the sale we made just now. You can see the items that we sold. You can see the discount here and the payment. So you can repeat this sale, add the items back to the current sale. You can reprint the receipt, and you can also do a void. So in POS, doing a void is pretty common. If there was a mistake, for example, they'll just pretend this sale never happened. So what we'll do is we'll void it in the POS, but also in NetSuite, because we've already submitted this to NetSuite. So then we also have to void this sale in NetSuite, including the payments. So we're basically removing it, but it's still going to be in the system. So it will look like over here where there was a void. So this sale is now void. The payment isn't actually taken, but it's still in the system. So there's a trail here. Okay, so this is the list of transactions that happened today. There's a few totals here. There isn't like a report here, and the idea is that you're using NetSuite for reporting, because all of the data here is submitted to NetSuite in real time. So all of these sales here are actually in NetSuite. So if I look here under sales orders, you're going to see that all of these transactions are already listed in NetSuite, so that happens in real time. So you can actually do, all right, so these are made here. So you can actually do your reporting in NetSuite, not just for one location, but for all locations. So it's actually better than having reporting in the POS. It takes some getting used to for some customers because they're used to getting reports from the POS. But in NetSuite, you can of course get much more extensive reports, and then you can use, for example, a daily email where you're sending a daily report to the store manager, and then they get to see that in their email, right? So this is where we have all the sales. You just see the total. You can see at the end of the day when you're doing your settlement, and you're typing in basically all of the totals. So if we're not integrating with the payment terminal, this is something that has to be entered manually. We can integrate with some payment terminals and also with some like loyalty programs or other sort of payment types. But the base scenario is that you're basically typing this over from whatever the terminal says. So the terminal says, $60, but the system thinks that the total should be $129. Then we're obviously $69 short, and the idea here is that apparently that means that if you're over in one and under in the other, probably one of your payments wasn't put in the right payment method. So what you can do is you can see the list of payments that were reported for a particular payment method. Click on that payment, click on that receipt number, and then actually change the payment method from here. Right, so this is something the store manager can do at the end of the day when they're looking at their settlement, just to make sure that the payments recorded in NetSuite actually match the totals on the payment device, or let's say the totals in any of the other sort of payment methods or coupons that you're taking, or cash. So we're working on some enhancements here. So first of all, we're going to make this setting that you can do this blind. So that means you're not getting to see the actual totals before you have to enter it in. That's just sort of a protection against people just copying over the number and saying they're done. And there is also some improvements we're going to do to cash accounting, where you have separate ins and outs instead of just the actual at the end of the day. So that's some of the things we're working on right now, which will come in a month or two. That's basically a settlement. One other thing you can do is if the POS was offline last night, for example, or the store manager wasn't around, you can actually just keep using the POS and then set a cutoff time for the settlement. So you can say, well, yesterday at midnight, and then what it does is it just takes the payments that were made before that time to do the settlement, right? So you can actually do a settlement from before. That's just a small feature we have here, which is quite important if the POS tends to go offline or store managers aren't always there. Okay, so that's the settlement. There aren't many settings, basically just a receipt printer, because all these settings are in NetSuite. So like I said, all of the products, even the login and all the sales obviously match one-to-one with the data in NetSuite. So even the POS settings are configured in NetSuite rather than in the POS itself. We've seen the product search. The only other thing I wanted to show was the return, where if I'm facing a customer and they want to do a return, we can of course search for their past transactions from here, but we can also go here and either enter a receipt number or actually a payment that was not a payment, a transaction that was done in NetSuite. So if I enter a NetSuite a NetSuite number, I get to see the NetSuite sale. So there are two here that match because this is a demo system and we can never use it. But the this one I'm interested in. So this was a sale that was made previously. It went from the warehouse, so this was apparently an e-commerce sale. I can select one of these lines, or I can select the entire receipt. And then I can also change the quantity. So if this customer is coming back with one of these items, I say one, and I select this line, and I can do a return. So what this does is it looks up the actual sales price, so as the item and the customer. So it takes the correct customer for the return, it takes the item against the actual sales price, so including discounts and whatever were given, and then it does a -1. So from here we can do a refund if you allow refunds, and you can turn it off, of course. take another item and basically offset the price there. So if the price of this item is higher than the return or the same, you can basically like take a payment or just submit straight away. So that's basically an exchange scenario where you're taking an item back and then selling another one. And in NetSuite, this will create the correct records. So in NetSuite, this will take the item back, we'll take the inventory in, we'll create a credit memo, and then offset that against the sale of this item, right? So that's what happens in NetSuite. So that's a return or exchange scenario that we've got here. And that's basically all there is for the POS itself. Of course, we also have the kitchen display, which is just doing its thing here for the F&B. And then the other thing we have, which I wanted to show, is the inventory module. So this could be a module that sits in the POS. So it could basically sit in here in between the other ones, or it could be a separate item where we actually have these options separately. So you can use them on a mobile device or a different computer. And then what this does is it has inbound orders, which means purchase orders, transfers, and customer returns that are coming into a particular location. So this could be a store or it could be a warehouse. In this case, we're in a warehouse. So this warehouse has these purchase orders coming in. You can browse through them. You can see which items are coming in and which ones are already received for these orders. And then you can receive them. That works the same as fulfillment, which I'm going to show. So for fulfillment, we have the same thing. So these are orders that are supposed to be fulfilled: sales orders, transfers, and vendor returns. These fulfillments I can select over here. So let me just find, this is a store replenishment from the warehouse. We're going to pick this up. So I select this icon and it goes over here, which means I've selected it. And I can take another one and also select that one. So I'm actually going to do two fulfillments at the same time. And then when I press here, this actually claims the orders, which means that it's going to tell other users of the same system at the same location that they shouldn't fulfill these anymore because I'm right now fulfilling them. Right, so it's blocking them from other users. At the same time, it's loading the current inventory that I'm supposed to be fulfilling here. So it's going to look at the items that I'm supposed to be fulfilling and seeing where they are in the warehouse currently. So I can print it out, which is basically a pick list. So this pick list is showing up on paper. And also what this does, it has the order number in it. It's probably very small, but the order number here, and there's a barcode here as well, which is useful later on when you're trying to identify what these products are for that you fulfilled, right? So in the warehouse, somebody can go around with just a barcode scanner and take items for these orders. So I have a list of remaining items, sorry, and I did this before, so I already have two that are done. So either I scan a barcode or I select them from here. And this will tell me to put it into, this is for order number 2. So if I have 2 baskets, for example, I'm supposed to put this into basket number 2. Then it tells me the quantity, so I'm going to pick 2. And then I can put in the bin number that I'm taking these items from. So if I'm in a warehouse with bins, it will properly, take the inventory from this particular bin that I'm submitting here. So it will tell you which bin to go to, and in fact, we actually sort this according to the shortest distance in the warehouse. So these items are sorted according to the shortest route. So we call this pick routing. So that's one thing we actually support. So that the top item is always the closest to you, and then sort of the closest, so the shortest path through your warehouse will be to pick these items in order. All right, so that's fulfillment. So after I'm done with this, I can press the submit button here, and then this will create an item fulfillment record in NetSuite. Right? So if there are any open sales orders here, that will then just create the item fulfillment in NetSuite itself. So that's fulfillment. And then there's also a separate shipping step where I can take a particular order that I might have picked and or packed, it doesn't really matter. And then you can ship that one. So this deals with the pick, pack, ship in NetSuite, which is optional. So here I've loaded this from NetSuite, and there's one fulfillment for this particular order. with these two items. So here I can then, for example, go to a third-party logistics partner, 3PL, and get the the particular shipping number that they provide me with, and then mark it as shipped. So this will then go back to NetSuite and enter this number into the fulfillment. You can also use this, for example, for store pickup. So if you have an e-commerce system that allows store pickup, then in the store they can use this system to essentially ship the orders out from the store itself and record the any data from the customer as they pick it up and then mark it as shipped. Right, so that'll be in a different scenario. So you can use this both in a warehouse and in a store. In a warehouse, you also want to move items around the warehouse, so bin movement. But in a store, what you essentially usually want to do is a transfer back to a warehouse or to another store. So you can actually create a transfer order here in NetSuite. So as I select Demo Store 2, I can then start scanning an item by barcode or typing a product name up here. Set the quantity that I'm transferring, as well as the bin that I'm taking it from if there are bins. So in a store, you wouldn't have bins. But in this scenario, I'm in a warehouse. So I'm transferring the items to this location. These are my items, and you can actually add more. And then when I press submit, this is going to create the transfer order right from the system. So the idea here is that this system is used by somebody who's dealing physically with these items, has a barcode scanner, let's say, or at least some way to identify the items. And then all they have to care about is the inbound orders, outbound orders, and transfers, so that they can move these items around without having to deal with NetSuite itself. So essentially, they're using NetSuite, but through this interface, which is really easy to use. Which is the same with the POS, right? So at the POS, you have staff at a store who's making sales. They only want to deal with the POS, right? And they don't have to log into NetSuite. They will be able to make orders from there. But then at the same time, the management of the company only has to look in NetSuite because the POS will submit its sales to NetSuite. All the fulfillment and even the kitchen, the kitchen timing will be in the fulfillment record. So management only has to deal with NetSuite. And same here, right? So with the inventory movements, management will be able to see all of these movements in NetSuite, whereas the staff who's dealing with the items sort of physically, they can use this system and it's much easier for them. One last thing here is inventory count. So you can actually use this in a store or in a warehouse where you can essentially take an item in a warehouse. You'll need to enter a bin as well. So you're actually supposed to use this on a mobile device, so make it a bit smaller, sorry. Where was I? Here. So I have a bin, I have an item, and now I can set the quantity, right? Let me actually clear that because there was already some inventory there. So the item, you enter the bin number, and then you set the quantity. So let's say there are 6 of these, and I take another one, and there are, let's see, 5 of these. Now, when I go to the summary, I'll see that I have a particular bin. I have the 2 products that I scanned, and I have the count. You can also count using a barcode scanner, but that's up to the specific process that they use in the store. And then this will tell me that the total is 11. Now, it doesn't tell me what it's supposed to be. This is the count that I just did. So when I click submit here, this is going to create a CSV file because there is no draft inventory adjustment in NetSuite. So we have to sort of go this way around. What the CSV file allows the sort of management to do is to check the numbers before they go into NetSuite and also compare. So if you have 2 staff that are doing the same count, in the CSV file, you'll be able to see if the count is the same. And if they're not the same, they have to count again, right? So the CSV file is kind of a check in between. And that CSV file can be imported into NetSuite as an inventory adjustment. The system here does actually load the inventory, so it can give you some hints. Even though it doesn't show it, I can say, well, this particular bin should have other products. So if you were trying to count everything in this bin, you probably forgot some items. If they're not there, you can actually check this checkbox, and then it will set those quantities to 0. So that's helpful if there were supposed to be items in the bin, but they were missing. Then you can check this, and then the CSV file will also have a minus quantity for whatever items were supposed to be there. All right, so these are kind of hints that we can do as well. So those are the functions here. So we can receive items, we can fulfill them, and do shipping. We can move them around a warehouse, and we can initiate a transfer, and then we can count as well. So again, for a warehouse or for a store, and then the POS, of course, is just for a store. So this would be like a bakery scenario where you just deal with the receipt all the time. What you see is what you get. You see the items over here. You submit the sale, and it's going to print out that way. Or you have a restaurant scenario where you see initially you see the tables, and then you can manage tables this way, right? So it's the same POS, it's just managed differently, right? Whether you have different receipts that are open, or you have just one receipt that is open at the same time. All right. And of course, all the data is submitted to NetSuite, right? So when you go here into one of these sales, it looks like just any other sales order in NetSuite. We can actually create different types of transactions. So it doesn't have to be sales order, invoice, payment, fulfillment. We can actually take a shortcut of a cash sale as well, or create an invoice straight away. So if you're familiar with different transactions in NetSuite, we can actually create sort of the different ones that the company itself wants to use. So we're quite flexible with that. All right, so I guess that's it for what I wanted to show. If you have any questions, that would be a good time to ask.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Realizable, so we can not only change it. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. So item, which is this one. Sorry, not service. It's a non-inventory. Yeah, so it is a non-inventory item, and then these will be inventory items underneath. Yeah. So it doesn't do a. Yeah, exactly. But it's so it doesn't do sort of the manufacturing, right? Because we get this question a lot of manufacturing transactions, but we don't do that because that would be way too much. If you have 100 sales a day, you don't want to have 600 manufacturing transactions. So we actually directly submit the non-inventory item and then inventory items underneath. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you can count how many, sorry, how many ham you sort of fulfilled, right? And that is removed from your inventory. And you can also count by the non-inventory item and see how much you made in terms of revenue. No, it's also up in NetSuite. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Maybe my sound is not too good. But
very, very soft. But let me just increase the volume.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I have three questions. Can we see the availability of the stock, inventory stock, during operate the Zokusuite?
Yeah, you can. So I forgot to show this just now. There was this step where I added an item using the search, but you can also get there from the menu. So I can click on this information button, and here there's a tab called inventory. So this is where you can actually see the inventory for the current location as well as other locations, right? This is taken from NetSuite. So this actually does a search in NetSuite for the inventory. So you'd have to basically always go into this screen and then inventory to see it because that's when it starts to load it.
Okay. Is that real time or?
Yes. So it actually looks it up in NetSuite the moment you go to this screen.
All right. Real time means real time, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, if you're offline, it just simply can't fetch this data, right? So it'll keep trying, but you can't get it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Can the menu in the NetSuite item and maybe using it features?
Yeah. So the menu over here is actually, it can be done in two ways. Either you configure each button individually. So then in the configuration, you'll say, okay, we have a cakes button, and then inside the had another button, and then you have a whole structure, and then you have to list every single item in there, or we basically categorize these by item categories or other fields. So you can set a field or a custom field to be the category to which we sort this. Yeah.
All right. Can we use the more than one payment type? For example, maybe the customer wants to pay in cash and also using vouchers or a credit card.
Yeah, exactly. They can. So like I just did. So you just simply add multiple payments from the menu and make sure the total adds up. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Done it. Yeah.
All right. So okay. Anybody else have a question?
No more questions from me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So I'm only browser because I do a demo here. So there's multiple tabs open. Normally in a PC or a Mac, this would run as an application. So it's a native application. In a tablet, we install it locally on a tablet, but it will still sort of run in the it's a very, very thin wrapper around the browser, right? So it does actually run in a browser, but you wouldn't see the browser in a tablet either, right? So in a tablet, you have a icon on the tablet itself. You start it, and it actually starts a browser, but you don't see it. All right, so that does sort of limit the receipt printers that you can use. As you can see here, if I go to settings, if I'm in a browser, I can only use a network receipt printer, which there are. So it is quite easy to get a network receipt printer these days. They're okay. But if I install this locally, I can just use any USB printer. So that's really the only difference. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So for that particular scenario, we can actually have different clients that access the same data. So then you have one POS, which is kind of the master, and it has all the data. And then it would also have all of the here in the POS. If you have multiple tablets that are sort of interconnected, you would only be able to make a sale on the other ones, right? So one is sort of the real POS, and the other ones just show the sales screen in the tables, so that when you make a change here and you click done, it actually submits it to the other POS. if that makes sense. Yeah, one central, yeah, and that behaves like as if it's the only one in the store, and that has to do with the settlement and everything. So the settlement is done on one computer, and then all the other ones can just make a sale and submit it to the other one. It's still not really client server like you would have in a traditional POS, right? Because the data is still going to NetSuite, and essentially NetSuite is your server. But if you're offline, you can keep working in this way. Yeah.
Okay, one more from me. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. If we have let's say 5 restaurants, okay, restaurants, and means 5 location, is it?
Yep.
Are you using location features in NetSuite?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's why it's able to, in the inventory, it's able to show the current location, which is an actual location in NetSuite and the other nodes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been exactly an hour, pretty much. So I think that's good. So if you have any other questions, just feel free to ask offline. We'll respond to you quickly.
Great presentation and great demo. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak later.
All
All right. Thank you.
How you do?
Right, bye-bye.
Oke.
Bye-bye.
Ya, terima kasih. Terima kasih, George. Yalmar, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you, Jama. Thank you,
Thank
Pak
you.
Ido. Yeah.
You too.